have a confession. I signed up for my last winter study class without really knowing what I was getting myself into. I knew that I was interested in teaching and that I wanted to be off campus, but that was basically it. So I put my name down for Jeff Thaler's Resettling Refugees in Maine program, and on January 2nd, 2013, found myself in Portland. There were 9 of us students that year. Some of you are in the audience right now. That month was really hard in a lot of ways. I grew up in a comfortable New Jersey suburb, mostly white, mostly upper middle class. I was born in the United States, the daughter of American citizens. We speak English at home. To my knowledge, I had never met a refugee before. The very word conjured up a mishmash of sad adjectives in my mind: lost, helpless, needy. Refugee was about as far of a thing from my comfortable suburban upbringing as I could possibly imagine. But in Portland, I was working in a high school with many students who had come over as refugees. I was living with a family originally from Sudan. Bianca is on the left, my friend's host sister Edna is on the right. For the first time in my life, I was constantly surrounded by people with drastically different backgrounds than my own. And it was often very uncomfortable. I love my host family, but I sometimes felt caught in the midst of intergenerational cultural battles over food and language and schooling. I was frustrated by my students who could never seem to remember that you have to add an S onto verbs following a third-person singular pronoun, but never any other ones. I read, you read, he reads. As someone brought up in a non-Christian household, I felt totally lost at the weekly evangelical services my host mother attended. But I also really loved being in Portland, and I was really happy there. I made dinner with my host sisters every night. 2 of my students took it upon themselves to teach me some basic Somali, like how to count to 10 and say good morning and look here, which they said would be very useful in the classroom. I attended community meetings where refugees voiced their concerns and hopes about policy issues and state funding. I asked a lot of people a lot of questions. I felt like my mind was being flooded with a million different ideas about culture and identity and the dynamics of inclusion and exclusion. What does fluency really mean? Who is an American? How can you claim a culture for your own? Portland, Maine is a 4 hours drive away from Williamstown. It's not far. There's a tendency to think that studying away means studying abroad. But I want to ask this: how can we at Williams genuinely and thoughtfully explore the question of other lives here in the US? And as an American institution, don't we have a responsibility to that question? Experiential education as a way to think critically about American identity is not new at Williams. Legendary professor Robert Gaudino led a year-long program called Williams at Home in 1972. Jeff Thaler, class of 1974, who founded the Portland program, participated in Williams at Home as a sophomore. So the main program I did really is a direct descendant of Gaudino's Williams at Home vision. Williams at Home had 2 components. The first was on campus in the fall, where students undertook a project with the goal of approaching a local issue through the eyes of a Berkshires resident. In the second part, during the spring, students completed 4 homestays with small retail traders in Arkansas, and there's Jeff himself as a teenager, auto workers in Detroit, and farmers in Appalachia and Iowa. Gaudino isn't in the red chair there talking to a farmer. In his project proposal, Gaudino wrote, "It is assumed that the ordinary Williams student has been raised in the restricted life setting of a suburban community and in an exclusive family situation which has not stressed either encounters or conflicts with people of contrasting backgrounds, opinions, sensibilities. This background has restricted the student's experience of the character and complexity of public life. Too much of public action and controversy, too many institutions and claims are invisible to the sensibility and experience. The student will approach experience through the family with whom he lives. He will try to see as they see, both in their overt, consciously expressed public opinions and through their everyday, family-wide private sensibilities." Gaudino wrote this at a time when Williams students were all male and overwhelmingly white and well-to-do. Thanks very much to the work of the Sawyer era, the student body has changed quite a lot since then. A smaller chunk of Williams students grow up in the restricted suburban settings that Gaudino describes, but it's still a sizable number. I'm one of them. But I think that this approach to learning can be applied no matter what a student's background may be. The question of other lives always remains, no matter where you grew up or who your family is. How does this person, who seems entirely foreign and unknowable to me, live their life? What are their dreams? Who do they love? I believe that the homestay provides a kind of immersive experience into these questions, an experience that allows a student to think about the real-life implications of what he or she learns in the classroom. So what is it about the American homestay in particular that strikes such a strong chord with me? After all, what I'm describing might be applied to many study abroad situations. Who's to say that living with a French or Peruvian or Chinese family isn't as powerful an experience as living with an American one? And in many instances, I think it is. Living abroad undoubtedly makes us better and more informed citizens of the world. But what if we looked closer to home? What if we sought not only to understand our brethren living overseas, thousands of miles away, but those living in the next state, the next town, even next door to us? I challenge the notion that we, as Williams students, can live here for 4 years without getting to know any of the good people of the Berkshires who share these mountains with us. I challenge the notion that someone like me, who grew up in an affluent suburb, could easily spend my life interacting mostly with people from the same class and educational background. If you drive only 15 minutes away from my home, you will find yourself in one of the poorest cities in New Jersey, with a violent crime rate 38 times higher than the town I grew up in. It seems paradoxical to me that I can go off and study in East Africa next year, as I intend to do for a semester, without ever having interacted at length with these people who live so close by to my home. 15 minutes is not a long time. The value of experiential education, like the Portland program or Williams at Home, is not about doing community service or conducting an anthropological study. In many ways, it's the opposite. The point isn't to coolly analyze subjects from an arm's length. Rather, the goal is to meld the personal with the intellectual, to not only observe and take note of others' opinions, but to be aware of your own reactions and prejudices. How has your background influenced the way you see the world? What are you taking for granted? Before Portland, for example, I never thought about fluency. My fluency in the English language, indeed, in American culture, was something that was a given for me. It wasn't until Portland, where I helped teach English to the newest of newcomers at Portland High School, that I realized how precious this ability of mine is. Just think. I can read and write and speak English fluently in such a way that people will listen to me just as you are all doing now. But fluency extends beyond that. I am fluent in the knowledge of navigating life in America. I know how to use public transportation, how to send an email, how to tell a doctor that I'm feeling sick. So my time in Portland taught me that there is a lot that I know, but it also showed me that there are certain experiences that I can never know, certain feelings that I can only imagine. I've never fled my town because of war. I don't know what it's like to be a newcomer in an unknown country. I have never not been able to return home. But just because I don't identify as an immigrant or a refugee doesn't mean I can't try to identify with them. I can try to be empathetic. I can try to be an ally. In his reflections on experiential education, Gaudino held that, quote, "Our purpose is not just to have experience. It is to use it. It is to reflect upon it, to let it enhance or inhibit our sense of self." So how have my experiences in Portland influenced me since winter study ended? How can it continue into my life at Williams? The good news is that Williams already has made several efforts towards including experiential education in the everyday life of the college. The Center for Learning in Action opened recently, and it provides a lot of really great opportunities for students to get involved in local community projects. Many students participate in homestays during study abroad trips. Several classes have employed untraditional approaches to education. For example, there's a class being taught this semester in a local jail. Learning through living outside of the classroom has become less of a radical idea than it was during Gaudino's time. Jack Sawyer ushered in the abolishment of frats, the admittance of women, and increased diversity of all kind in the student body. Today, there is a huge variety of experiences and backgrounds to be found on this campus. I've known that since before I arrived here. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to come to Williams. But diversity is useless without dialogue. Ask yourself who your neighbors are, whether you know them. Invite them to tell their stories to you. Ask questions. I learned so much in Portland just by asking questions and having conversations. If you hear something that makes you uncomfortable or that you disagree with, don't jump to conclusions. Think about why you might feel that way. One of my friends on the trip recounted how she had asked her host mother about the practice of polygamy in her home country with the intention of challenging her. Instead, she and her host mother engaged in a dialogue that ultimately helped my friend understand where they were both coming from. It wasn't that my friend was suddenly in sympathy with polygamy, but she no longer dismissed her mother's stance as merely backwards or unenlightened. Williams students sometimes joke that we live in a bubble. We call it the purple bubble because we live in the Purple Valley and because our school colors are purple and yellow. It's our version of the ivory tower. And it's easy sometimes living in this rural valley to feel like we are totally cut off from the real world. But we aren't. My hope as we move into the future of education here is that we will never use the excuse that we are too remote or removed to explore the question of other lives. As students, I think we need to run headfirst into this question. I think it's our responsibility. Everyone can't go on the Portland trip. Jeff's current capacity is however many students can fit into the available cars. But I hope to see more educational experiences that unite the intellectual with the deeply personal. There is so much to be found. A mere 4-hour drive, or a 15-minute drive, or even a 5-minute walk away, if we can only bring ourselves to go there. Thank you very much.